Academic writing can be challenging, whether you're just starting university or tackling your dissertation. But don't worry.
We've compiled a full tutorial to guide you through this process and help you become a better writer. You will find out how to write in an academic style and what to avoid.
You will learn how to be more critical and how to use sources when writing your literature review. Also, we will show you how to write your research proposal and help you edit and proofread your academic paper.
Let's get started. Academic style is a way of writing that is used in academic settings, such as colleges and universities. Academic writing is different from casual writing because it's more formal and follows specific rules to make the writing clear and professional. Here are the 12 key points you should remember when writing in academic style. 1. Do not use idiomatic or colloquial vocabulary. This vocabulary is the kind of expressions you would use in everyday conversations. For example, stuff, teens or folks. Use formal language instead, for example, findings, adolescents, citizens. Always try to think about formal words when writing. The 10 most common would be words such as factor, aspect, findings, concept, analysis, assessment, evaluation, significant, outcome, and approach. Remember that using formal and academic vocabulary can enhance the clarity and credibility of your writing. Avoid the following: thing or something. You should use issue, factor, aspect, or topic instead. Avoid using the word like when you give examples. It is better to use such as or for instance. When writing, avoid using little or big. Use small or large instead. Avoid using good or bad. It is better to use positive or negative. Avoid using lots of. Use significant amount or considerable number. Try to avoid phrases with get, such as get rich or get better. Use prosper and improve instead. 2. Use vocabulary accurately. Do not confuse, for example, effect and effect. Effect refers to the influence or impact on something, often used as a verb. Effect talks about the result or outcome, often used as a noun. Another example could be infer and imply. Their meaning may seem to be very similar, but there are small differences. Infer means to deduce or draw a conclusion based on evidence or reasoning. However, imply means to suggest or indicate indirectly without being explicit. If you are not sure how to use certain words, check the exact meaning and use of these words in a good dictionary. Have a look how your particular word is used in sample sentences, what other words it collocates with, that is, what words naturally go before and after this word. To make it clearer, let's have a look at the following example: conduct an experiment. This collocation is commonly used in academic writing when describing the process of performing scientific experiments or research studies. The words conduct and experiment naturally go together in this context to indicate the action of carrying out a planned investigation to test a hypothesis or gather data. Example sentence: in order to investigate the effects of the new drug, researchers decided to conduct an experiment involving 2 control groups and 1 experimental group. Using such academic style collocations adds precision and coherence to your writing, and it is a common practice in formal research papers, essays, and scholarly articles. 3. Be precise when dealing with facts or figures. Avoid phrases such as a few people, a lot of, or hundreds of years ago. If possible, use precise figures and facts. If it is necessary to estimate numbers, use approximately rather than about. Also, avoid generalizations. That means making broad statements or conclusions about a group, category, or concept. Do not assume that all members of a group share the same characteristics, behaviors, or qualities. The examples of generalizations would be expressions such as we all know, people always, or people never. 4. Use tentative, cautious language. It is very common to use tentative or cautious language in academic writing. It is used to express caution, uncertainty, or modesty when presenting ideas or findings, or when you analyze sources or interpret results. It helps to acknowledge the limitations of the study or the possibility of alternative interpretations. Avoid absolute statements, such as education reduces crime. Instead, use cautious phrases, may reduce crime or tends to reduce crime. Using cautious language in academic writing shows that you're humble and understand the challenges in your research. It also invites your readers to engage critically with your work and consider multiple perspectives. Here are some examples of tentative language in academic style. The results suggest that. This phrase acknowledges that the findings provide evidence for a particular conclusion, but it doesn't claim absolute certainty. It is plausible to argue that. This expression suggests that the argument is reasonable, but it leaves room for other perspectives. The data appears to support the hypothesis that. The use of appears to indicates that the data provides some evidence for the hypothesis, but it doesn't firmly establish it. 5. Avoid subjective adverbs and emotive language. Such language can undermine the objectivity and credibility of the work. The main emphasis should be on the information you give and the arguments you make, rather than you. Some examples of subjective adverbs would be, unfortunately, luckily, or really. It is crucial to remember that academic writing aims to present information objectively and impartially. 6. Do not contract verb forms. Avoiding contractions in academic writing is a common practice, because it helps maintain a more formal and professional tone. For example, instead of using won't, hasn't, or can't, use the full forms will not, has not, and cannot. 7. Use passive voice correctly. Here are some reasons why passive voice is commonly employed in academic style. Emphasizing the action, or the object. Passive voice can shift the focus from the door of the action, the subject, to the action itself, or the object of the action. This is particularly useful when you want to highlight the importance of the action, or the results rather than the person, or entity performing it. In this sentence, the emphasis is on the analysis of the data rather than the researcher who performed the analysis. Maintaining objectivity and authoritativeness. Passive voice allows you to present information in a more neutral and authoritative manner, avoiding personal pronouns and reducing the author's presence in the text. Example: it was observed that the reaction rates increased with temperature. By using passive voice, the author minimizes their role in the observation, adding a more objective tone to the statement. Maintaining a formal and professional tone. Passive voice is a standard feature of formal writing, including academic style. It contributes to a more formal tone, which is often expected in scholarly works. Example: the results of the experiment were published in Nature magazine. This passive construction helps to make this sentence formal. The correct use of passive voice can improve clarity and objectivity of your text. However, be careful not to overuse it. Overusing passive voice can make the writing too complex and less engaging. In some cases, active voice may be more suitable, especially when the emphasis is on the subject, or when the door of the action is crucial to the context. The key is to strike a balance and choose the voice that best suits the specific writing goal and context in academic writing. 8. Do not use question forms. Explain ideas to the reader. Don't ask them questions. For example, "What is the reason for this change?" should be replaced by, "The reason for this change is that." 9. Avoid using etc. or so on. Etc. is used to indicate that there are additional items or examples that could be included in a list, but are not explicitly mentioned. It should be used sparingly, especially in academic writing, as it can be seen as too informal or imprecise. In formal academic writing, it's often better to provide a comprehensive list or rephrase the sentence to include all relevant examples explicitly. 10. Avoid using phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are two-word verbs that function as a single unit with a distinct meaning, for example, look after. They are common in everyday language, but in academic writing, it is better to use a more formal tone. For example, replace find out with discover, point out with indicate, or bring up with raise. Remember, whenever possible, opt for single-word verbs to maintain a more formal and professional tone. 11. Use citations and referencing. Proper citation and referencing are essential in academic writing to acknowledge the sources of information and ideas used in the work and to avoid plagiarism. Remember, there are two kinds of citations. The first one is called information prominent. It highlights the information. The author's name and the publication year are both given in brackets before the full stop. The second one is called author prominent. It highlights the author's name and uses a reporting verb to introduce the information. The publication year is given in brackets after the author's name. The reporting verb you choose can show opinion, distance and attitude as well as the type of information or research cited. 12. Use evidence. Academic writing uses evidence, like facts, research, and credible sources, to support its ideas and arguments. It's like building a strong case for what you're saying. When you write academically, you want people to trust your information, so you back up your points with evidence from reliable sources. This way, your writing is fair, balanced, and not just based on personal opinions. Using evidence makes your writing stronger and more convincing, because it shows that your ideas are well informed and based on real information. If you're working on a research paper, essay, or any academic project, now it's time to put these tips into practice. Step 1. Avoid emotive language. Emotive language refers to words and phrases that evoke strong emotional responses from the reader. These can include positive emotions like excitement and enthusiasm, or negative emotions like anger and sadness. In academic writing, the primary goal is to present information and arguments in a clear, objective, and unbiased manner. So, in general, you should avoid using emotive language. Do the following instead. Use neutral language. Choose words that are neutral and objective. Instead of saying shocking results, say unexpected results. Provide evidence. Let the evidence speak for itself. Instead of saying, this is an amazing discovery, provide the data, and let readers draw their own conclusions. Be specific. Avoid generalizations and be as specific as possible. Instead of saying, many people were very upset, say the study showed a 20% increase in dissatisfaction among participants. Focus on facts. Stick to the facts and avoid injecting personal opinions or feelings. Instead of saying, unfortunately, the policy failed, say the policy did not achieve its intended outcomes. Formal tone. Maintain a formal tone throughout your writing. Avoid colloquial language and phrases that are overly casual. When is emotive language acceptable? While generally to be avoided, there are some contexts in academic writing where emotive language might be more acceptable. Reflective writing, in personal reflections or narrative sections, some degree of emotive language might be appropriate. Qualitative research, in reporting qualitative data, especially interview responses, emotive language may be used to convey participants' feelings and experiences. Persuasive writing, in specific disciplines like rhetoric or literature, where the goal is to analyze or use persuasive techniques, emotive language may be discussed or analyzed. Step 2. Signposting. Signposting in academic writing refers to the use of phrases and words to guide the reader through the content of the paper. These signposts help to clarify the structure of the argument, indicate what has been covered, and preview what is to come. Effective signposting improves the readability and flow of the text, making it easier for readers to follow your line of reasoning. Key functions of signposting. Indicating structure. Signposts show the organization of the paper, outlining the main sections and how they are connected. Guiding the reader. They help the reader understand where they are in the argument and what to expect next. Emphasizing points. Signposts highlight important points or transitions, making sure the reader pays attention to key arguments or evidence. Types of signposts. 1. Introduction signposts. Purpose and scope, explaining what the paper will cover. Example: this paper examines the effects of climate change on coastal communities. Outline of structure, providing an overview of the sections. Example: the paper is divided into 3 sections. First, it explores the historical context. Second, it analyzes current trends. Finally, it discusses future implications. 2. Transition signposts. Moving between sections, indicating a shift from one topic or section to another. Example: having discussed the historical background, we now turn to the current situation. Linking ideas, connecting different points within a section. Example: in addition to economic impacts, social consequences must also be considered. 3. Emphasis signposts. Highlighting important information, drawing attention to key arguments or evidence. Example: it is crucial to note that. Summarizing key points, recapping main ideas to reinforce them. Example: to summarize, the main factors influencing this trend are. 4. Conclusion signposts. Summarizing content, recapping what has been discussed. Example: in conclusion, this paper has shown that. Indicating implications, suggesting the broader significance or future directions. Example: the findings suggest that more research is needed in this area. Step 3. Hedging. Hedging is a linguistic strategy used in writing and speaking to make statements less absolute and more tentative. It involves the use of words or phrases that soften the impact of the statement, indicating uncertainty, caution, or politeness. In academic writing, hedging is often used to avoid overgeneralization. By using hedging, you can avoid making broad or sweeping statements that might not be entirely accurate. Show caution. It helps in showing that the writer is cautious and considerate of different perspectives, which is important in academic discourse. Express probability rather than certainty. Academic findings are often presented as probable rather than definitive, reflecting the tentative nature of research. Politeness. Hedging can make statements less direct or assertive, which can be perceived as more polite or respectful. Examples of hedging in academic writing. Modal verbs, words like might, could, may, and would. Example: this study may indicate a correlation between X and Y. Qualifying adverbs, Words like possibly, probably, likely, and apparently. Example: the results are likely to be influenced by various factors. Tentative language. Phrases like it seems that, it appears that, it is possible that, and there is a chance that. Example: it appears that the treatment had a positive effect on the patients. Adjectives. Words like some, several, many, and few to avoid definitive quantification. Example: several participants reported improvements. Hedging in practice. Consider the following statements. Without hedging, this method is the best way to solve the problem. With hedging, this method may be the best way to solve the problem. The second statement is hedged and indicates a level of caution and openness to other possibilities. In summary, hedging is a vital part of academic writing that helps to present ideas and findings in a balanced and measured way, reflecting the complexities and uncertainties of research. Step 4. Paragraphs. Make sure each paragraph focuses on one topic. Your paragraphs shouldn't be too long. This way, you'll make it easier for your reader to follow your ideas. Make sure you have the topic sentence. This could be your statement, your assertion, your claim. Check that you present sufficient evidence to prove your point. Don't forget to cite and reference your sources. Use reporting verbs when citing. Also make sure there is a critical element in your writing. If missing, add analysis and critical evaluation of your evidence. Make sure what you write is relevant to your research or essay question. Step 5. Sentences. Your sentences should be formal, written without contractions. Use full forms instead. The sentences should not be too long, as this can confuse the reader. Sometimes shorter, to-the-point sentences are better than overly complicated long ones. Make sure your vocabulary is precise. Be careful with synonyms. Check their meaning and use, as sometimes they are not quite the same as the original word. Use a good dictionary for this. Why are you actually reading academic articles? Is it just to find some information, or is it perhaps to analyze, interpret, and evaluate what you've read? Critical reading is exactly this. It is a deeper and more complex engagement with a text. It is about asking questions. We can divide our questions into 3 sections: description, analysis, and, the most important one, evaluation. But first, even before you start reading your text, you need to think about why you want to read it. Think. What information do you want from the text? Is it to support your argument? Is it to find a research gap? Or perhaps to find different perspectives on your topic, or solutions to a problem? Remember to always have a clear purpose before you start reading. To help you understand this even better, we will use a fictional example. Let's say we want to write an essay on solutions to dangerous temperature rise in our city. So, we want to find some information about the reasons of rising temperature in cities and its effects on people's life. Also, we want to know the possible solutions to this problem, so we can evaluate them and see if they can be applicable in our context. Okay, so let's start with the first section. 1. Description. You need to understand the context of what you are reading. So, we found an article entitled, "Tackling the Heatwave Challenge in Rivertown, a Comprehensive Analysis." Now we need to find some information about the context. We may want to find the answers to the following questions. When and where does it take place? Who is affected? What's the main problem? Having this information will give you a better idea if the text is relevant to your topic. In our case, it is. So let's move on to the next part. 2. Analysis. Once the context is established, it is time to analyze the situation. Here, it is about asking how and why. You may want to find out why the presented argument, theory, or solution to the problem is important. Why did this situation occur? How are different aspects of the topic connected? Here are some notes from our reading, describing several factors contributing to the rising temperature in Rivertown. So, now we know what happens and why. It is time to move on to the most significant part. 3. Evaluation. This point is about possible implications, solutions and recommendations. Here you need to think about the following. What's next? So what? What if? For example, you may want to consider the possible impact of the proposed solutions, their drawbacks and benefits, or what could be the potential consequences of inaction. Here are some notes based on our article. You can make yours in a similar way. We extracted the suggested solutions from the article and added our opinion on potential challenges with these solutions and found some measures that were implemented to tackle these problems. You may also find some gaps and limitations in the author's arguments or suggestions, elements that are missing or would need to be adjusted in your context. Still, our work is not over yet. It is time to find another source and repeat the process. We would like to see if similar solutions were implemented somewhere else and how the potential problems have been overcome there, to get a different perspective. Once you've got some notes from various sources, compare the findings from the texts you were reading with other authors and their perspectives. Later, you will use that in your writing when synthesizing information from various sources. Here you need to be careful to distinguish between facts and opinions. Also, be aware of the writer's backgrounds, assumptions and purposes that could affect the way their texts have been written. You need to be aware of your own opinions as well, your judgment, positive and negative, so you can make an objective evaluation. You need to decide to what extent you are prepared to accept the author's arguments, opinions and conclusions. Remember that the aim of critical reading is not primarily to find faults or problems, but to assess the strength of the evidence and the argument. When reading, you may conclude that a study, or an article, presents very strong evidence and a well-reasoned argument. However, it is also useful to identify areas of the research studies or articles that are weak. Later, when you start writing, this may help you to convince your reader that this area of research needs more focus. This way, you can show the reasons why your dissertation, or a research paper, deals with a certain topic or a problem. So, a practical starting point is to consider everything you read not as fact, but as the stance or position of the writer. Once you've got your notes from your readings, it is time to start writing. A mistake many beginner writers make is to assume that everything they've read while preparing for their assignment is inherently true, simply because it has been published in an academic journal or a book. Similarly, another mistake is to assume that being critical means that they should only disagree with the source. However, writing critically is not exactly that. To make this clearer for you, let's begin with an explanation of what criticality actually means. Criticality comes from an understanding of a subject and taking information from many places, for example, lectures, journal articles or books. Then you can use this information to form your own opinions and ideas about a subject. Critical writing analyzes and evaluates information, usually from multiple sources, in order to develop an argument. So when you hear that you need to be more critical in your writing, you need to make sure that you include the following. 1. A balanced presentation of reasons why the conclusions of other writers may be accepted, or may need to be treated with caution. 2. A clear presentation of your own evidence and argument, leading to your conclusion. 3. A recognition of the limitations in your own evidence, argument, and conclusion. Remember that when writing critically, you are developing a reasoned argument and participating in an academic debate. Essentially, you are persuading your reader of your position on the topic at hand. Remember, your critical writing requires analysis and discussion, rather than merely description. You need the answers to the why and how, not the what. To help you understand this better, try to focus on writing answers to the questions related to your topic, such as,
why is it significant?
Think about the importance of the issue. For example, for the country, local residents, or the environment.
Why is it relevant to your argument?
Here we are asking for an explanation, or justification, why you want to include a particular point, piece of information, or idea from another source, into your writing. You should clarify the connection between the presented idea and the overall point or thesis you are trying to convey.
How does it relate to other literature?
Show connections and relationships between sources and the way they present the topic. For example, do they build upon, challenge, or contribute to the existing body of knowledge within that field?
How can a theory be put into practice?
Here you are expected to provide insights into the practical implications and applications of the theory. This might involve discussing specific examples, case studies, or scenarios where the theory can be used.
Why are you not persuaded by the argument?
With this question, provide a thoughtful analysis of the weaknesses, flaws, or shortcomings you perceive in the argument. This might involve pointing out logical fallacies, insufficient evidence, contradictory information, or any other factors that, in your view, make the argument difficult to persuade you.
How does it lead you to reach your conclusion?
This question asks you to explain the logical or rational process by which you arrived at a specific conclusion. This might involve discussing relevant evidence, logical deductions, critical analysis, or any other considerations that played a role in your decision-making process. When writing, you can use evidence from your sources. But remember to be selective. You don't have to include everything you have read, or refer to everything in the same depth in your essay or a literature review. Only include research, which is relevant, and which helps you understand more about your own investigation. One way of evaluating sources is to decide whether they are academic or non-academic.
How can you recognize if what you want to read is an academic source?
You can do it by checking the following. Source evaluation. Is it published in a scientific or academic journal or a book? Does it have an abstract? Does it have the basic format, such as introduction, literature review, methodology, results, discussion and conclusion? Does it provide an in-depth discussion? Is it written by an expert, academic, or a specialist in the field? Does it use technical or professional language? Does it provide references? If you answered yes to these questions, it is very likely that the source you are using is credible and academic. The common examples of academic sources will be the following. Research articles. Original documents, such as official texts, corporate or legal reports, or historical documents. Discipline-specific textbooks. Journal articles, which review existing work. Case studies. Conference reports containing original research. Here are examples of non-academic sources. Online encyclopedia. For example, Wikipedia, as it can be edited by everyone and the information may be not 100% accurate. Newspaper articles and popular magazines. The articles are very often not written by authorities in the field, and they are not peer-reviewed by experts or academics. It is important to use reliable sources, because in your essay, dissertation, or thesis, you need to prove that your arguments are not only personal opinions, but they are supported by verified evidence from the scientific or academic community. Once you've made sure that your source is academic, it is time to engage with the text more, to find out if it is actually useful for your assignment. You can do it by asking a series of questions about the source. Source type. What is it? Knowing more about the source will help you recognize its value to you. For example, is it a review of all the latest research on your topic, or a report of one individual study? Currency. When was it written? This question can be critical, either because you need current, up-to-date information, or because you need to use historical sources. Authority. Who wrote it? This question can help determine whether it is credible, written by experts in the field. Purpose. Why was it written? Knowing the author's motivation will help you determine whether there is any bias to the information. Relevance. How can I use it? Knowing how relevant the text is to your task is essential. Consider how the information in the source relates to your essay title, your dissertation, or thesis. You don't need to read the whole article at this stage. It is usually enough to read the abstract to find out if a given source may contain relevant information. Academic reading is extensive. You need to read from many sources, but you don't need to read everything. That is why it is important to always have a clear purpose before you start reading. Ask yourself what you want to find in the text. Avoid wasting time by reading too much or reading the wrong part of the text. To summarize, evaluating sources is a crucial skill for any researcher. It helps you to find reliable and relevant information, avoid misinformation and plagiarism, and support your arguments with evidence.
So what is a literature review?
Essentially, it's a critical analysis and synthesis of the relevant literature on a particular topic. It's not just a summary of what others have said, but a way of evaluating and synthesizing the existing research in a way that highlights gaps, inconsistencies, and opportunities for future research.
Why is it important to undertake a literature review?
Your research is a small piece in a complicated jigsaw puzzle of knowledge. It does not stand alone. Your reader needs to know about the whole jigsaw puzzle, the bigger picture.
How do you do it?
Follow these 3 steps. Step 1. Analyze. Show a questioning and searching approach when reading. Identify what is important. Look for explanations, relationships, comparisons, predictions, generalizations, and theories. Also, identify what is not in the source text, to consider any potential bias. Step 2. Summarize. Report ideas from the source material briefly. Choose what is relevant and important for your writing. Integrate ideas from the source material into what you wish to say. Step 3. Evaluate. Make judgments about the material. Identify underlying assumptions, attitudes, and opinions in the source material. Evaluate arguments and assess how effectively they are supported. Identify potential gaps. Include your comment, as well as summaries of ideas from the source material. Remember, it is your evaluation. Bear in mind that your goal is not to merely summarize existing literature, but to make a case that there is a significant gap or limitation within the existing literature that needs to be addressed. That there are good reasons for believing your hypothesis is likely to be correct. As you read through the literature, it's important to take notes and organize your findings. Using a mind map can help you organize your material under general themes, issues, or questions. Take notes under focus questions rather than from each article separately. This is like first sorting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle into piles of related pieces to simplify the job of putting the pieces together. The important thing is to keep track of what you've read and what you've learnt. Make sure you are keeping up with the latest literature, and use the literature it refers to as well. Once you have all your notes, it's time to start writing. A good literature review should have a clear structure, with an introduction that explains the topic and the research question, a main body that summarizes and synthesizes the literature, and a conclusion that highlights the main findings and suggests avenues for future research. See your job as answering readers' questions rather than just collating background information. Understand the purpose of each part of what you are writing. You should be able to justify each component of what you write. Finally, it's important to cite your sources properly and to use a consistent citation style throughout your literature review. This not only gives credit to the authors whose work you're citing, but also helps readers to find the sources you're using. One, use evidence. Back up points by referring to specific writers or studies. 2. Be relevant. Only include information related to the review focus. 3. Be selective. Only include the most important points. 4. Be brief. Summarize main points, rather than paraphrase or use quotations. 5. Show importance. The more important a study is, the more space it should take up. 6. Compare and contrast. Highlight any similarities or differences in the findings. 7. Synthesize. Link sources together if they say the same thing. 8. Be cautious. Do not make claims the evidence does not show. Summary. By following these tips, you can write a literature review that is comprehensive, critical, and well organized. When you're working on a research paper, synthesizing means taking information from multiple sources and using it to build a better understanding of your topic. It's like putting puzzle pieces together to make a complete picture. You'll look at different ideas and evidence and figure out how they fit together. So, when you organize and present your sources, you will be grouping common ideas or arguments together within a paragraph or a text. By doing this, you can create a new understanding of your topic that you wouldn't have gotten from just one source. It is also important to remember about referencing style conventions that you are using. In our case, we are using Harvard referencing style, but you need to make sure you follow the style suggested by your department.
So why is it important to synthesize?
In academic writing, synthesizing sources is a key component of literature reviews, research papers, and other scholarly works that require a comprehensive and critical analysis of existing knowledge on a particular topic. It allows you to highlight what is important to you about the articles or books you have read. It is your decision what to use from the sources, so remember to choose the relevant parts that can help you convince your reader to your arguments. It shows how the information from articles fit together with your research. This way you are showing that you understand the connection between literature and your study. It highlights where the articles overlap or contrast. You can show how some studies have built on the previous ones, or how the ideas or research results contrast.
Can you show me another example?
Sure. Here we can see Garcia adds to the previous research of Johnson. In the last sentence, we can see how the author summarizes both findings. Final tip. Next time, when you read an academic article, pay attention to how the authors synthesize, what language and linking words they use. Later, you can emulate this style in your own writing. Synthesizing sources can be easier if you follow these steps. 1. Understand the sources. Read each source carefully, highlighting key points and making note of the main arguments and evidence they provide. This will help you identify similarities and differences between the sources and determine their overall reliability and relevance to your research. It also allows you to show what is important to you about the articles or books you have read. 2. Create a clear main point. Your thesis statement should express the main idea or argument of your essay or dissertation. It should reflect the combined ideas from the sources, so don't just summarize them separately. Demonstrate to your reader how the information from articles fit together with your research. 3. Find similarities and differences. Look for common themes or patterns across the sources. Also, note any differences or contradictions. It can help you identify where ideas connect, overlap, or contrast. This way you can also show how some studies have built on the previous ones. Write separate paragraphs that focus on different aspects or perspectives. Instead of presenting sources one after another, integrate them by comparing and contrasting and then combining their content in your own analysis. 4. Provide context and interpretation. Step back and reflect on the broader implications of the ideas from your sources. What do they collectively reveal about your topic? Are there any gaps in the existing knowledge that your synthesis can help address? Share your perspective, insights, and interpretations based on the information that you have given. 5. Stay objective and critical. Evaluate the source. For example, do you agree or disagree with it? Is the source reliable or still relevant? Try to provide a balanced analysis that considers different perspectives. When you look at your sources, recognize any potential biases. For example, is the author hired by a certain company and having interest in a positive presentation of their research? Also, consider possible limitations. For example, has the research been done in certain conditions, limited by sample size or timing? 6. Write clearly and concisely. Use clear and simple language to effectively communicate your ideas. Use transitions and linking words to connect paragraphs smoothly. Try to concisely summarize the main views of the articles to the reader. In academic writing, it is important to be brief and to the point, so you should only present what is necessary. So, remember, synthesizing is all about analyzing, connecting, and contextualizing the information at hand. By combining the strengths of various sources, you can build a more comprehensive understanding of your topic and present a well-rounded perspective to your reader. The main aim of a research proposal is to give yourself a clear and definite idea of what you are going to do, how you are going to do it, and when you are going to do it. Let's get straight into details. The research proposal should be an outline of your proposed dissertation or thesis, giving some details about the aims and your research question. Your research proposal needs a title. Think about the aims of your project, the guiding question, or a practical problem that your research is planning to solve. Your research proposal needs an introduction. Include a short discussion of your topic and a justification of its significance, its value in your field in these times. Ask yourself, how would you argue for the value of this proposed project? Try to persuade your reader that this project is worthwhile. Make sure to also provide some background and a plan of the dissertation, that is, What will be included in each chapter? Your research proposal needs a literature review. Think. What are the key debates around your topic? What do academics and experts talk about and write about? What do they share in common, and what do they disagree about? Consider how to critically evaluate the theories, concepts, methods and data used in previous studies of issues around yours and closely related topics. See if you can identify any research gaps, problems, and limitations in other studies. What do you notice the others don't talk enough about? What do you notice they seem to avoid? What perspectives are missing or underrepresented? Remember to organize your literature review in accordance with themes or perspectives rather than in accordance with time or history. Your research proposal needs a research question. A research question is the ground, foundation, the signpost for your research. Remember the following. Make your question clear, so it provides enough specifics that your audience can easily understand its purpose without needing additional explanation. Make your question focused, so it is narrow enough that it can be answered thoroughly in the space the writing task allows. Make your question concise, so it is expressed in the fewest possible words. Make your question complex, so it is not answerable with a simple yes or no, but rather requires synthesis and analysis of ideas and sources before providing an answer. Make your question arguable, so its potential answers are open to debate rather than accepted facts.
So, are your research questions ready? Share them in the comments below.
Your research proposal needs a methodology section. In this part, you should describe, explain and justify your choices of methodology. Say what the things and processes are, and give reasons why the methods should work, why they are appropriate, why they are the best. Consider the following. The research question. What do you want to find out? What are your main aims? You cannot select an appropriate research method without knowing what it needs to accomplish. The type of data. What type of data do you need to collect in order to answer your research question? Is it quantitative, numerical data, qualitative, non-numerical data, or both? The type of data you need will help you narrow down your choices of research methods. The resources available. How much time, money and other resources do you have available for your research? Some research methods may be more time-consuming and more expensive than others. The ethical considerations. For example, will you be working with minors or vulnerable people? Do you need any ethical approvals? Your research proposal needs to have a conclusion. This is your chance to remind your reader about your overall research idea. A proposal conclusion should have an honest acknowledgement of the special value or significance of your project and its potential limitations.
Let's talk about editing and proofreading, two very important stages of writing. What is the difference between proofreading your work and editing your work? Which one of these do you do first? Let us explain this a little bit more in detail so it's not confusing anymore. We can define proofreading as the identification of language errors, as well as formatting and layout errors. You do it at the very end of your writing, when the content is fixed, when you don't want to add any more information. You don't want to add any new arguments or sources. So proofreading is more about finding those small mistakes that you can still fix in formatting, in grammar, and vocabulary. Editing is more about the big picture, addressing the issues such as logical structure of paragraphs, adding more examples, more relevant ideas, or deleting unnecessary information. First, you edit. If you are still developing the paragraphs, you can still make substantial changes in your work. Why do you do this first and then you proofread? Because when you make substantial changes and you add elements to your writing, you can still make grammar, language, or punctuation mistakes in these new sentences that you are including. That is why you want to proofread at the end. This diagram shows the most important elements that you should think of when you want to edit your work. Starting from the word count, you may have some word limits for your assignments, so you may need to increase or you may need to reduce the number of words. Here are some ideas, some questions that you can think of if you want to increase the number of words. You may want to add more examples. You may want to add another counter argument, or maybe you want to add more sources. Sometimes, however, you may need to reduce the number of words. Maybe you waffle too much, maybe you have some irrelevant details, maybe too many examples. So think about ways of reducing these by deleting unnecessary information. Another way is using more concise language, words, expressions that express the same idea but are shorter. For example, due to the fact can be reduced to because. It is the same when you think about the paragraphs. You may think about the structure and the length of the paragraphs. The question is, what is a good length of a paragraph? There are no strict rules about that, but half a page, 1/3 of a page is a good length. One full-page paragraph looks a bit too much. Also, make sure that every paragraph has a topic sentence, showing your reader what this paragraph is about. If you're introducing an argument in your paragraph, make sure there is evidence to prove it. So maybe you need to add sources. Also, make sure there is some critical voice from you. That means that there is some evaluation of the information that you are using from the sources. Next, signposting. So when we talk about sentences in your paragraphs, check, do you have enough linking words? Are the ideas that you are describing in your paragraphs well connected? Use words such as first, second, moreover, in addition, as a result, hence, or therefore. These kind of expressions will help with the flow of the text. They can help your reader read easier and understand your way of thinking. Okay, so the next up is hedging, also known as tentative or cautious language. When you write, sometimes you cannot be 100% certain of everything, right? Also, you want to be humble in your work. In academic writing, there is a lot of speculation, deduction, suggestion. So these kind of expressions such as maybe, possibly, it may be that, perhaps, it is likely, it appears to be, it seems to be, are very important and very useful, especially when you think about conclusions or recommendations for the future. And this is something you can edit and correct before you submit your assignment. The next thing you need to think about is academic voice. Check. Is your academic voice visible? Are you critical enough in your writing? Did you use passive and active voice correctly? Are you using formal tone and avoid emotive language? One more thing you can check is the length of your sentences. Think, what is better, long or short sentences? Your sentences should not be too long. So if your sentence is 4 or 5 lines long, it's getting a little bit too long and it may get confusing for your reader. And with long sentences like this, you might make mistakes with grammar constructions. So, when it comes to long sentences, sometimes it's better to split them into 2 or 3 shorter ones. You can add a linking word to make it clearer, easier to read, easier to follow. Usually students do not have problems with short sentences at university level, but sentences that are overly long are a bit more challenging. So check if some of your sentences would look better if you split them. There are also a few things to consider. Think about the content. What was your research question? Have you actually answered this question? Is there anything still missing about the content? Are you still missing some examples? Explanations? Any parts of your work? Have you referenced the material from your sources? Important point here. Sometimes we have citations in text, but they're missing in the reference list or the other way around. You have something in the reference list, but you do not use it in your text. Why this happens? Sometimes you add ideas from sources to your writing, and you add both, the in-text citation and also the entry in your reference list, as you should. But it may happen that later you think that maybe it was not a good idea after all, and you delete it. So once you delete it from your text, you need to make sure that the reference entry is also deleted from your reference list. In other words, what you have in the text and in the reference list should match. And remember that everything that is not yours, that is from external sources, should be referenced. Next point, check coherence. It's about the overall logic of your work. Check. Is everything logical? Does it make sense? Are the ideas in the right order? Can your reader see the structure of your argument easily? Did you signpost it? Check cohesion. It's about linking your sentences. It's about the flow of the text. Check. Is it clear? This is what we mentioned before about the signposting and linking words. Make sure sentences are connected well. So let's summarize. As you will usually make significant revisions to the content of your paper before you finish and submit your work, it is natural that you should proofread after editing, after revising your work, because you can still make grammar, vocabulary, or punctuation mistakes in the parts that you are changing or adding to your assignment. Okay then, let's talk about proofreading now. What is proofreading? We can say it's a careful check of your writing for mistakes. What do you need to look for when you proofread? Spelling errors, poor punctuation, incorrect formatting, incomplete sentence structures, referencing convention errors, inappropriate language style, and grammar errors. So start with spelling errors, typos, American or British spelling, etc. When it comes to punctuation, check your use of capital letters, spacing, commas, full stops, parentheses, and similar things like that. Next one, incorrect formatting. It's about you checking your font type, size, spacing, or headings. Sometimes students copy and paste text from different sources and they forget to change the font. So you end up with one paragraph size 12, font Arial, another paragraph size 13, and font Times New Roman. So make sure this is all looking good. The same font type and correct size of the font. Also, formatting is connected with referencing style errors. Very often students are required to follow a certain format for writing and referencing, for example, APA, MLA, or Harvard style. So make sure you check that your work adheres to these guidelines. You can use technology to help you here. There are many programs and online tools that can help you with referencing. However, you should not trust them 100%. Sometimes they make mistakes, for example, confusing first names and surnames of authors. So be careful with that. When it comes to incomplete sentence structure, here we talk about sentences that sometimes maybe miss a word or two, or have some words duplicated. This often happens when you transform or change your sentences a lot. Your brain and your eyes may see the word, but it's not actually there. It's just in your brain. A quick fix for this is to read your work aloud. You will notice that something is not right when you hear it. Another method is to leave your writing for some time and come back to this with fresh eyes. You'll be more likely to spot such mistakes. Your writing should be academic. So while checking your work, you may find some informal expressions such as kids or stuff. Make sure you change them into more formal ones. For example, adolescents and materials. Check if your work is clear for you. But you might also ask a friend to check if it's clear for them. Because sometimes you may understand everything, but when somebody else reads your work, they may find it difficult to understand. They may also be able to spot some mistakes that you missed. So finding a friend to read your work can be very helpful. Check that each paragraph in the body of your paper is related to your thesis or research question. Everything that you write in your academic paper should be relevant to your topic. Check if there is anything irrelevant, extra, or missing in your paragraphs. If you are using any specialized terms, check, have you given definitions of these terms in your introduction? If you think that you checked everything, give yourself a break. Leave your work, do something else. Go out, eat something, watch TV. It's even better if you can leave it till the next day. Your brain will reset when you sleep, and when you look at your work again the next day, you may be able to spot mistakes that you did not notice the day before. Your brain will see it as somebody else's work, and therefore will be more critical of your writing. You can repeat this process if you have time. You will see that your work can improve more the more times you look at it. You cannot just proofread 1 minute before your submission, before your deadline. You need to plan to proofread to give yourself time for this process. Dedicate at least 2 or 3 days before your submission just for this, so you have enough time to make corrections. Check your work again and again and again. Include proofreading in your planning. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Search for your usual mistakes. If you know that your grammar is not always great, or your logic, or your sentence structure, search for mistakes in this area. You can use online tools like Grammarly or Hemingway Editor to help you with grammar. But again, do not trust them 100%. Use your brain, use your knowledge, to check that what it corrected is actually okay. If you're still not sure, You can find grammar guidelines online or use a dictionary to find similar examples. To finish off, here are 10 tips for proofreading. Which one do you think is right for you? Which one would you choose? Let's see which option is the most popular. Let us know which one you picked in the comments section below. By now, you should have enough knowledge to edit and proofread correctly before you submit your work. Step 1. Take a break. The first step in proofreading is to take a break. After you've finished writing and editing, give yourself some time away from your work. This break will help you approach your document with fresh eyes, making it easier to spot mistakes. Step 2. Print it out. Step 2 is to print out your document. Reading on paper is different from reading on a screen and can help you catch errors you might have missed. Also, you can make notes and corrections directly on the paper, which can be very satisfying. Keep a red pen handy and mark up your paper as you go through it. You'll be surprised at how many small errors you can catch this way. Step 3. Read aloud. Next up, read your work aloud. This technique is incredibly effective for catching awkward phrasing, run-on sentences, and other issues that might not be immediately obvious when reading silently. When you read aloud, you're more likely to notice if something doesn't sound right. If you stumble over a sentence, it's a good indicator that it needs revision. Step 4. Focus on one thing at a time. Step 4 is to focus on one thing at a time. Proofreading can be overwhelming if you're trying to catch every type of error at once. Instead, go through your document multiple times, each time focusing on a specific type of error: spelling, grammar, punctuation, and formatting. This methodical approach ensures you don't miss anything. Step 5. Use tools wisely. Step 5 is to use tools wisely. Spell checkers and grammar checkers, like Grammarly or Hemingway Editor, can be very helpful. However, don't rely on them completely. They're not foolproof. Use these tools to catch obvious errors, but always double-check their suggestions. Sometimes, automated tools can make mistakes or miss context-specific issues. Step 6. Check formatting. Don't forget to check your formatting. Make sure your document adheres to the required style guide, whether it's APA, MLA, Chicago, or another format. Pay attention to margins, font size, headings, and page numbers. Consistent and correct formatting not only makes your paper look professional, but also ensures it meets academic standards. Step 7. Proofread backwards. Here's a fun trick. Proofread backwards. Start from the last sentence and work your way to the beginning. This technique forces you to focus on each sentence in isolation, helping you spot errors more easily. It may feel strange at first, but it really helps in catching those sneaky mistakes. Step 8. Get a second pair of eyes. Finally, get a second pair of eyes to review your work. Whether it's a friend, peer, or professional proofreader, another person can provide a fresh perspective and catch errors you might have missed. Remember, nobody catches every mistake in their own writing, so seeking help is always a good idea. Recap. To recap, here are the 8 steps to proofreading your academic work. By following these steps, you'll be well on your way to submitting a polished and error-free paper.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more educational content like this.
And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. See you soon.